Hello and welcome to the roundup. It's a little bit different for us today. We're going to talk about something that is probably a little bit abstract from the park, but is relevant in today's world, and it comes from the fact that Eddie Sotto has done the Season Pass podcast and has given his views on numerous things, including Disneyland Paris. But we're gonna have a look at something else that Eddie Sotto has been talking about more recently, and that comes in the form of the Blue Loop website. And this website, for anyone who doesn't quite know, is kind of like I suppose, a mini LinkedIn of different people from the theme park world giving their commentary on what's happening now and what's happened in the past and design and things like that. And Eddie Sotto has left a good few articles on that. So we're going to cover one of them today that really piqued my interest, which leads us on to what Eddie Sotto is currently doing now that he is not at Disneyland Paris and with the Walt Disney Company. So we're going to have a look, and this is the battle of COVID-19, park operators versus design creatives. And to summarise very quickly, it goes into a lot more detail than we will go into today, and I'm not going to read the article word for word because you can quite easily go and read it on the blueloop.com website yourself. It's freely available, you don't have to register or subscribe to see it. However, it's a little bit of information from where Imagineers kind of plan a park and where designers come up with the experience that they want you to see. And on that, they talk about the different elements that go into it, and when they're designing it, it comes from an affinity to make sure the experience you have has been designed to the last moment. So one of the things that really touched me before, and you may have seen this already on the Disney Plus series, which is the Imagineering story. Eddie Sotto talks about designing Disneyland Paris, and he talks about one of the things in that is that when they choose the music to what you walk down Main Street to, that they make sure that the music that you are physically walking to is at the same pace as the average person takes when they are walking, so that you don't feel rushed, it doesn't feel as though it's out of place, and the music kind of fits in. And I think that's a surreal detail that we all sort of know of. You maybe didn't know of it verbosely in the sense that, oh wait a minute, that music's matching my pace, but actually you know what I'm talking about when I say that actually when you're walking down Main Street in the morning and you're trying to get up to the hub, you can kind of feel that, oh wait a minute, there is a little bit of a pace to this, that's nice and it's laid back, it wants you to go slowly, it wants you to take in the experience, it wants you to feel that small town feel. And I think that is the sort of detail they go for. And then one of the things they kind of highlight in the article is, obviously, although he doesn't go as far as saying it, he's got some pictures up, and it's where they've got the standard grey barriers with big "Do Not Stand Here" stickers, and the pictures from Shanghai Disney. And it's where guests are obviously being socially distanced, and this is where operations kind of take over. And one of the things that operations will be doing right now, because obviously we're in a situation with COVID, is that they will have these fantastic boxes of drawn or spray painted on the ground. There are lines everywhere, and we're having a look at that point where, you know, everybody wants to be in compliance with the government legislation, and they want to be in compliance with COVID sort of rules and ideals to make sure that the experience is safe. And you know, there's no detraction from that. Theme park operations have to do that. They are required, you know, through their morality, but not just their morality, but their focus on making you safe and feel safe in their world. They have to take specific actions. And one of the things that oddly Eddie Sotto, I should say, comes up with is he's saying, you know, that this is it for a while. You know, this is something that has now come up, and yeah, there probably will be a vaccine. I'd imagine there will soon be a vaccine. Chaddox, for example, is in phase 3. India's bought enough for the whole country, so there will be a vaccine. And Eddie Sotto says that at that point, you know, there will be a vaccine, but at the same time, you know, that's not going to reassure people. This is one pandemic. There will be more pandemics. So what can we do above and beyond that to make sure that we have a solution? And, you know, what if this vaccine takes forever to come along? So it's one of those things that, you know, we really have to consider. If this is the new norm and this might go on for a while, let's say the vaccine fails, or let's say there's anything else, we need to have a look at what are we looking at to do? How can we get this back? And that's one of the places where Eddie Sotto puts in quite a controversial and probably challenging view that right now, physical distancing, masks, are not the final solution. I mean, they're a temporary solution, and I don't think even Eddie Sotto contests that. They're a temporary solution, but they're not a designed solution. They are a reactionary solution. And he talks about something that we'll come on to talk about soon, which is the great unmasking, the future-proofing of the parks. Like, how do we get to the situation where everybody doesn't have to wear a mask? Because obviously, you know, nobody enjoys it. There maybe are some actually that enjoy wearing a mask, but not many people enjoy wearing a mask. And then we have a look at the solutions that possibly are slightly more invasive initially, but then make your experience over the course of the day fully more appreciable, because you can take in all those little design elements, and you can be, you know, next to each other at a parade, you can crush in and see a show, you can be part of the atmosphere and part of the crowd. So how do we get there? So one of the things he says about unmasking is it too good to be true? There are several nearly immediate COVID-19 tests that are becoming market ready and are in testing now. These use either saliva, breath, molecules, or even sound waves to screen and clear us specifically of COVID-19 or potentially a future pandemic. To eliminate the hassle when we then add the magic to these processes to make screening fun, reassuring, and something seamless as part of your park, cruise, or stadium visit, imagination and wow with technology applied within. This is what we call future-proofing. We will bring back the value and fun that people will pay for. What company wants to ever go through this again? So, obviously at this point, Eddie Sotto is sharing his view that, you know, masking and distancing and shields and all that is not the way to do this. Let's use technology and let's incorporate it in a fun way where we can return the theme parks that we all know and love to what they actually are. And that's where he now has a thing called Future-Proof Experiences that's run and is one of the projects of Sotto Studios. Future-proofing means unmasking and restoring your guest experience. Now, again, we'll link to futureproofexperiences.com, and we're looking at what is the new normal and what can we do. So he says thermometers are not cutting it. Here's how and why we must unmask. So we need the shared experience, and it's not going to come back until we do something to get rid of the risk of COVID, and therefore we can go back to having the shared experience. So we want to be less like a hospital, because in hospitals people wear masks and they're distanced and they have walls between them and things like that, and it kills the magic, Eddie goes on to say. And what we need to do is, and it's all just going to continuously decline business until we do that. So again, what his main suggestion here is a non-intrusive COVID test on each guest, or potentially a future pandemic or virutic test, that can yield a 1 minute result with the highest degree of accuracy. So this is one of these things that we're trying to make into a thing that you can do. And that you know, if you've done it on your cruise ships, for example, everybody knows that cruise ships, often you get that cruise cough or that cruise cold. And I mean, I think COVID has proved on other cruise ships that, you know, it's a serious thing. So holistically, it could be something that it could apply to a bigger situation rather than just the COVID pandemic. And what we're doing is, when we only admit the guests that are COVID free, they're no longer wary of each other. They no longer need to sanitize too much. They no longer need to maintain distance, wear masks, do things that are unnatural to normal human behaviour. And they're having a look at different sort of things, breath testing, they're looking at spit tests, they're looking at things like that. And it's interesting that Eddie Sotto has kind of pushed for this, because it is probably the next step. How do we get out? What is the new normal? And his experience as Imagineer is telling us that merely complying with the situation that is with masks and distancing is not enough. People will not therefore go to places like Disney or theme parks. People don't want to be in confined spaces with others. They don't want other people to be near them, because genuinely people are worried. And I think that, and it's right that Eddie Sotto is now seeking to kind of champion the idea of a better solution, and using technology and designs that he's kind of been through with the R&D and the design work that they've done in Imagineering to really have a go at this. And you might be able to make it something fun. I mean, one of the things that kind of jump out is you already go through a bag check, and bag check, it's mandatory, but you do feel safe. You're kind of like, oh, at Disney, I'm well aware nobody's coming in with a gun. I'm well aware that nobody's coming in with a big knife. I'm well aware that there isn't somebody sneaking in big bottles of alcohol. They're not gonna, there's not gonna be any drunks or anything here. And that's one of the things that make you feel a little bit safer. When you go to Disney, you know that the bags are being checked. Likewise, when you go through airport security, you go through a process for that. And Disney do their bag check better than airport security do the security check, just by way off that. And certainly I'm glad that it's kind of something like Disney that are taking the lead on this, and certainly people that have been affiliated with Disney, such as Eddie Sotto, because you run the risk that somebody like the TSA in America take over. And if you've travelled to any country in the world, you will know the TSA are by far one of the most brutal security agencies out there in how they handle things. So one of the things that you'd be looking at is how do you storyboard this? How do you make it something that people actually want to do, rather than kind of they're like, oh, I don't want to have my temperature taken. I don't want to spit in a little vial. How do you make that a bit more fun? And that's where the theming will come in, and that's really what will set the people who do very, very well at this out from the people who do not do very well at all. And it is a very interesting take on how do you conquer COVID in a theme park? Like, how do you return Disney to Disney without it being one of those really awkward situations where you are doing something that makes people feel quite unnatural? So to shine a light on it, it kind of seems like one of the things will be rapid testing, be that I think saliva testing is probably one of the quickest, and breath testing is another quick one that's coming up. There are certainly some medical initial studies into people doing very, very quick tests, paper-based tests that can then be run through an analyzer very quickly. And again, these things are very expensive to begin with, but once you start getting theme parks, stadiums and restaurants all wanting to do this, you move into the situation where everything that was very expensive is now not as expensive as it was. So we can have a look and apply this to kind of, if we have a look at what we're doing in Disneyland Paris, and I'm not going to use the American parks because there's a whole sort of politicalisation of the American situation just now, and I don't want to delve into that at all. So, we're in a situation just now where if you are in the UK, France has just been added to the quarantine list, so therefore you have to quarantine when you get to France, you have to quarantine when you come home from France. There's just a whole lot of quarantine there, and nobody really wants to do that. The banner pages of the Disneyland Paris website is already, it starts off with a warning. There's nothing magical about it. It's Disneyland Paris phased reopening has begun, aka if you come now, you are not getting the full experience. Disneyland Paris phased reopening introduced enhanced health and safety measures implemented for both cast and guests. The capacity for parks is still significantly limited to comply with government requirements. We're managing attendance through a new online registration system, and it's subject to availability. I mean, that's the opening paragraph of Disneyland Paris right now. I mean, in that, there's about 7 things that bounce out at you. You're like, oh my god, this sounds terrible. It's phased, meaning that the whole experience is not available, but the price will be because there's less guests. They need to recoup that money somehow. There are enhanced health and safety measures. It sounds good at first, but they're aimed at you. They're not aimed at the park. And so they should be. Capacity is significantly limited. I mean, who is like, hi, I'm looking forward to significant limitation on my day, and then the dreaded word governmental requirements. I mean, whenever government comes up with requirements, everybody shakes their head and thinks, what a lot of rubbish is this going to be? What is coming from this point? And then an online registration system. Nobody gets excited about an online registration system. And that is before you even try and book your ticket. That's before you even try and book a stay. You're already being told there are lines and queues and paperwork, so get ready. So then, Disneyland Paris have actually been quite comical here, because they've got Edna Mode presenting the enhanced health and safety measures at Disneyland Paris. Now, Edna Mode is not considered someone who you would consider friendly or magical. She's one of those Disney characters who have spent her time being snooty and snobby and aggressive. So already they're setting the tone for how this is going to be for you, and it's got pictures of you washing your hands, staying physically apart, masks. And you know what? They're right to do it, but it's just one of those things that when you hear about it, it does not inspire magic to you. Buy your tickets in advance, register in advance. You're going to struggle to change park. have a read what character, you can't meet any of the characters, we're really sorry, you can take a selfie, but you can't meet them. Half the attractions are shut, capacity is reduced. If you're coming to see a show, you're going to have to, follow all these other rules. We've got buffet restaurants where we'll bring it to your table rather than you going up and picking what you want as you've always done. Our shops have capacity. Oh, it sounds dreadful when you hear it like that. And it's one of those things that, you feel bad for you, but you also feel bad for the cast that have got to work through that. And then you kind of need to go through that. And it's very difficult. So you have to also a voluntary health screening, which is just, make sure you've been no contact with anybody else. There's no quarantine orders, no chills, cough, shortness of breath, breathing fatigue, body aches, headache, new loss of taste, smell, sore throat, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. I mean, the list is so big that you probably just have that from travelling. I mean, who doesn't get a sore throat or a dry cough when they're travelling on a plane? I go from Edinburgh Airport into Charles de Gaulle, and I have a headache pretty much just on arrival, just because I enjoy flying, I enjoy travelling, but when you're cramped on an EasyJet flight and they've got the air conditioning at the wrong setting, and it's not always lovely. It really isn't always great. And then in an airport, nobody ever has fresh air in an airport, so it's always stuffy and you have to get up early in the morning. So of course, by the time I get there, I already have a headache, I already feel sore, I'm fatigued, So I mean, I've got half the symptoms before I even get there. So by that logic, I would not be going into Disneyland Paris. So, and comically on the bottom of their website, it says it's now time for the magic. So you've got to see where Eddie's coming from. Are we going to go through years and years of enhanced health and safety measures with, Edna Mode lecturing us everywhere, and quite rightly so. She is right to do so. But how do we elevate that to the next level? And I think I'm in Eddie Sotto's camp, where he argues that this is the wrong way to do it. And he doesn't say that people are wrong for doing it, but he argues this is not the long-term future of it. And instead, we should be looking at the new technologies and trying to incorporate them in a magical way. And if they do that, I mean, they could literally do that on the Disney Magical Express. It's a bus that takes you from the airport and takes you to the park. I don't think it's actually called the Magical Express in Paris. I think it's just called the Disney Shuttle. But anyway, they could do it there. You could have your result by the time you get to your room. Maybe you get your room on arrival now, rather than waiting until 3 o'clock. And then you get your test taken, and then somebody comes along with your tickets and your magic card and lets you into the park. Maybe you do it on your travel to the park. Possibly you do it at the gates. There's different ways you could do it. There's different ways you could make it. It is going to cost them a little bit more, but at the same time, it's going to allow guests to get the stay that they actually wanted. You could potentially mail it out. If it's a 1 minute test, mail it out, mail it back. You could do it in the UK before you go. And that's one of the things that we now need to explore. And certainly I'm glad that the conversation is moving on from masks and sanitising your hands and, everybody trying their best. Because we know at the best of times, how many people are wearing their mask under their nose? How many people can't wear a mask properly? How many people have suddenly developed some medical condition that they didn't seem to have the rest of their life, but all of a sudden, once they've been asked to wear a mask, they suddenly cannot possibly comply. So you know what I'm talking about, and I think we'd all feel much safer if there was a better way to do this, and I think a fair and equitable test would be the best way to do this. And they're right, this could help during flu season, this could help during many other things, and I think that it is a little bit invasive of your privacy, but at the same time it's going to allow you to have that experience that you so richly deserve, that you pay a fair amount of money for. And lastly, it's going to leave you with an experience that you enjoyed, rather than an experience that was kind of forced together with enhanced safety measures. So I enjoy seeing how this discussion is going to play out, because I imagine there's going to be a multifaceted response to this, and certainly it's not the way anybody's gone yet, but I think Eddie Sotto has hit the nail on the head on how we have to go in the future. At that, I've been Graham, this has been a roundup. Have a great night, goodbye.